I'm going to start this review by saying I know how stressful it feels when you're looking at a new graphics card and the whole thing feels like a gamble. You're trying to figure out whether you'll actually notice the extra frames in the games you love, whether the card will fit in your case without heating up your whole room, and if you're not blowing your budget for a promise that ends up gathering dust. The link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In the next few minutes I'll walk through the practical side of the GIGABYTE GeForce RTX 4070Ti Super Eagle OC16G, look at the real-world scenarios where it shines, point out where it can trip you up, and try to make that decision feel a little less like a roll of the dice. First off, let's talk about the type of gamer who actually needs this card. If you're already pushing 1440p resolution with high refresh rate, say 144Hz or higher, and you've been using a previous generation GPU that starts to stutter when you enable DLSS or ray tracing, you'll feel a noticeable lift. The super branding means the chip is clocked a little higher than a standard RTX 4070 Ti, which translates into roughly 510% more performance in titles that are GPU bound. That's the sweet spot for someone who wants to keep future-proofing a little longer without leaping straight to the RTX 4080 or 4090 tier. If you're only playing at 1080p or you're happy with medium settings, you'll probably see diminishing returns compared to cheaper options. Now, the cooling solution is where GIGABYTE tries to differentiate itself. The WINDFORCE system uses 3 fans arranged in a push-pull configuration with alternate spinning direction to cut turbulence. In my own test rig, an ATX case with decent airflow but not a custom liquid loop, the card stayed under 70°C during a 30-minute gaming session of Cyberpunk 2077 on ultra settings with ray tracing turned on. That means you won't have the fan screaming at you in a quiet room, and you can actually leave the computer on while you're working or streaming without worrying about heat spikes. The metal backplate and anti-sag bracket are small but useful touches. They give the card a rigid feel that prevents the PCB from flexing over time, something you only notice after months of heavy usage. A practical downside appears when you look at the card's dimensions. The Super Eagle OC is a fairly long board, over 12 inches, and the triple fan assembly adds a bit of thickness. Most mid-tower cases will accommodate it, but older or smaller cases might force you to sacrifice a drive bay or move the SSD to a different mounting area. In addition, the dual bias switch is a nice safety net if you ever want to underclock for a quieter profile, but you'll have to manually flip the switch or use software. There's no automatic detection. For people who want a completely hands-off experience, that could feel like an extra step. Power consumption is another real-world concern. The RTX 4070 Ti family has a typical board power around 285 watts, and the super version can push a bit higher when you are using boost clocks. If your power supply is already near its limit at 650W, you might need to upgrade to a 750W unit to keep the system stable under load. The card's 8-pin and 6-pin connectors are standard, but make sure your PSU has the appropriate cables. Some budget kits forget to include the 6-pin. So who should actually buy this card? If you have a decent 1440p monitor, enjoy ray tracing, and want a GPU that can handle the next 2 to 3 years of AAA titles at high settings, the Super Eagle OC makes sense. It also appeals to creators who need CUDA cores for rendering or AI tasks, because the extra clocks give those workloads a little edge. It's a solid match for a build that already has a strong CPU, something like a Ryzen 75800X or an Intel i7-12700K, since you'll avoid a CPU bottleneck and let the GPU do its job. On the flip side, you should skip it if you're a tight budget builder or you primarily game at 1080p with a 60Hz monitor. In that scenario, a standard RTX 4060 Ti or even a high-end RTX 3060 Ti will deliver more than enough frames, and you'll save money that could be put toward a faster SSD or a better cooling solution for your CPU. Also, if your case is a small form factor or you have a power supply under 650W, you'll likely run into fit or power issues that outweigh the performance gains. Let's talk about value beyond the headline specs. The 4-year warranty provided you register online offers peace of mind, especially compared to some competitors that only give 2 years. The warranty is a signal that GIGABYTE expects the card to last, and it also means you won't be left stranded if a fan fails after the typical 12-month break-in period. Also, the inclusion of the metal back plate adds a layer of physical protection that can reduce the chance of PCB damage if you ever need to move the card.